Hey guys, welcome to Mad Scientist BBQ. I'm Jeremy Yoder, and today, something I've dreamt about for a long time is finally coming true. I got my hands on a bone-in brisket, and we're gonna put it in the smoker and see if we can make brisket perfection. I want to thank today's sponsor, HelloFresh. Now, HelloFresh is a company that sends meal kits to your door, so it's the peak of convenience. You don't have to go to the grocery store and search for all the different ingredients for a recipe. It all shows up together. You don't use just a tiny portion of an ingredient and then let it sit in your pantry until it expires. You get to use the exact right amount right then to make your meal. In addition to saving time, HelloFresh makes cooking a meal a lot less stressful. So my wife often gets intimidated with trying to cook a meal, but with HelloFresh, it was super easy, and what she got at the end was restaurant quality good. It was amazing. Another great benefit of HelloFresh is you get pre-portioned food. So one thing that happens to me a lot is I will make a bunch of food and then it'll be way too much for us to eat, and we end up throwing it away, and it's really disheartening. With HelloFresh, you don't have to worry about that problem. Now, the meal kits come with everything you need, and you have pictures and instructions on exactly how to make everything. So the first one we ate was balsamic tomato and herb chicken, which was delicious. We had sweet chili pork bowls, but the one that I'm gonna make today is ancho barbecue sloppy joes. I know it's gonna be delicious and I can't wait to try it. So I'm gonna get to cooking it and we're gonna see how it turns out. Now, if you guys want to make delicious meals like this, let me tell you, it's really good. Just go to HelloFresh.com and use code Mad Scientist BBQ 12 to get 12 free meals, including free shipping. Now, if this thing looks kind of crazy to you, that's because it is. But what's strange is that all briskets actually start their lives as bone-in briskets. So what happens is, you have a whole side of beef, and then the processors will take that side of beef, and with a bandsaw, they'll cut out this big brisket primal cut. And then from that, they're gonna remove the bones, and you get your regular grocery store brisket. But instead, what I wanted to do is I wanted to try to cook one with the bones in it. So I called Stutzman Brothers Meats and asked them if they could send me a bone-in brisket, and they said sure, and so they sent me this humongous 30-pound bone-in brisket. Now, I've never cooked one of these before, but I've cooked a lot of briskets, so I'm gonna try to apply the brisket knowledge that I have to this thing. I'm gonna leave the bones in, because if I take the bones out, then it's just kind of a regular brisket. So we're gonna cook it up, but first I'm gonna trim off a lot of this fat because there's a huge layer of fat on the outside. I'll try to make it look kind of like a brisket, maybe a Frankenstein brisket, but we're gonna get that thing trimmed up, seasoned up with just salt and pepper, and then out on the smoker. All right, it's time to put this thing on the smoker. Franken brisket, here we go. So, this brisket I'm gonna put on like I put on normal briskets, with the fat side up, which is actually, if you look at the anatomy of the cow, it's the underside of the cow. So, we're putting it upside down, kind of. But the way I think of it, it's right side up. So, we're gonna go in like this. The bones are gonna be on the bottom. Thing's huge. All right, we're looking good. Okay, we're checking in on our bone-in brisket. So this has been on for about 2.5 hours. I'm just seeing if I need to start spraying. So I'm not spraying to maintain moisture within the brisket, because what feels like moisture in your mouth is actually rendered fat. And unlike a regular brisket that has fat on one side, this brisket, because of the bones underneath, actually has a layer of fat, the regular brisket, another layer of fat, and then the bones themselves. So it's not about moisture, it's about keeping things from burning. But this looks like it has really good color. We see nice deep dark red, all that's good. This fat hasn't been on there long enough to really render properly. So we're still gonna keep going. We're not gonna even think about wrapping for another probably 4 or 5 hours. But we need to start spraying about every 30 minutes at this point, so all the exposed meat stays nice and soft. It's been about 6 hours on our bone-in brisket here, and the weird thing is you can actually kind of see the shape of the brisket sitting on top of a layer of fat and then the ribs underneath. So it's kind of a weird experience for me because I've cooked a whole bunch of briskets, never one like this. But looks like nothing's burning, got good color, fat's starting to render. You can see this pocket of fat in between the brisket layer and the rib layer. It's starting to render down, and hopefully we should be done before too long. Even though it's so thick, it's going to take a lot longer than the regular brisket. Let's check the internal temp. It's pretty remarkable. It's been on there for 6 hours, and the internal temp is under 100 degrees in the center. So it looks like we're in for a very long cook on that one. So it's still humongous. At this point, we're losing light, so we're not going to keep filming tonight, but I can give you the plan as to what's going to happen to this brisket. So when it reaches an internal temp of probably about 165, 170 degrees, and that might be a while, I'm going to wrap it up in butcher paper. I'm going to add a little bit of beef tallow just to try to help the bark out a little bit. And then I'm going to cook it to probably 203, just whenever it feels buttery soft when I put in the probe. That's when it's going to come off, and then it's going to rest for about 8 hours overnight. So we're going to check on this guy tomorrow and see how it's doing. So I pulled this behemoth off the smoker after a long time. It took so long I even considered wrapping this thing in foil. So if you do one of these, expect a 20+ hour cook. This one has cooked for a long time, and now it's rested for about 8 hours. So this should be perfect to slice into, and let's see what it looks like. First impressions, number one, this thing looks absolutely insane. It's humongous, there are bones sticking out of it, it's nuts. The second thing is, this is some of the best looking bark I have ever seen on a brisket. So the outside looks absolutely perfect, textbook what you want. We have rendered fat, and it kind of looks like the surface of a meteorite where there are kind of craters here and there. There should be lots and lots of flavor. But the thing I'm most curious to know about is what level of moisture am I gonna have in this flat? So points are usually juicy if you've done things right, but flats can oftentimes get dried out. Because there's a layer of fat underneath the muscle and a layer of fat on top, that should mean that there's lots of moisture retained in that flat. And so when I slice it open, we're gonna find out if that's true. I haven't sliced one of these before, but what I'm gonna attempt to do is slice through the flat, slice through the fat that's underneath that, and then take off one of the rib bones and the meat that's attached to it. So for this flat, I wasn't able to get through all the way through the bones, so I just took off this part of the flat. It looks nice and juicy. I think I'm gonna have to taste it because there's great bark on the outside. There's lots of moisture in here, so I gotta see how good it is. is super juicy. Big bite. That is by far the juiciest flat from a brisket I have ever tasted, and there's not even a close second. That is remarkable. That flat is actually juicier to the mouth than most points from briskets, even if they've been cooked extremely well. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna scavenge a piece from the point right here. If it's as juicy as that flat was by comparison, this is gonna be mind-blowingly good. Let's find out. When we talk about moisture in briskets, that doesn't even really describe how moist this slice is right now. I mean, you just touch it, you put any pressure on it, and you just see the whole surface get covered in rendered fat. So if this isn't juicy, nothing's going to be juicy. Let me take a bite and see how it tastes. Oh, it's like brisket heaven. Without question, this is the juiciest brisket I've ever made in my entire life. And I've been working really hard to make juicy briskets for a long time. This is next level incredible. I didn't even expect this. I thought it would be maybe a little juicier, but this is not just different on, you know, the continuum of dry to juicy briskets. This is like a separate class of juiciness. It's insane. I pulled out these bones from the bottom of this thing just to see what the meat between the bones was going to be like. So it looks good. It looks tender. Let's see how it tastes. Oh. Wow. That flavor right there, that is what every pot roast dreams of being. It's perfectly tender, but there's so much rendered fat in there that it's so incredibly juicy. There's not a dry part of it. For everybody who's ever tried to eat a pot roast and you're trying to choke down this dry, stringy meat, that is the antithesis of that, and that's what you should really be trying to do if you're doing low and slow cooking. It's so moist. I don't even have the words to describe how incredible that is. This brisket is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and there are things that I've cooked in the past that I've dreamt about doing that have kind of been a disappointment. Japanese A5 Wagyu brisket, it was very good, but it wasn't anything super special. This right here, this is special, and it's kind of a showstopper because no other brisket looks like this. And so if you cook one of these, people are going to be asking you about it. They're going to be tasting it. They're going to think you're a brisket god if you make one of these guys. I got to be honest with you guys. When I called Stutzman Brothers Meats and asked if they could cut me one of these, I thought, well, this will be fun and interesting, but it's not something I would ever really consider cooking again. I kind of thought it was a gimmick. But after cooking this, I'm convinced that I'm going to do this again, and I'll have more knowledge as to how to do it better. But the way it was today was incredible. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. And if you have the opportunity to cook one of these, I would definitely suggest trying it. It's a lot of fun. It's a long time, but it's worth the payoff in the end. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe down below and hit the like button. And you can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Mad Scientist BBQ. So I'll see you guys next time.